unanimous of the Senate with leave of the body, we're going to turn back to the middle of page 4, still on the order of House Bill's third reading. We have Senator Sullivan's House Bill 1604. Senator Sullivan, Madam Secretary, please read the bill.
House Bill 1604, an act concerning child visitation, which may be referred to as the Steven Watkins Memorial Act. Third reading of the bill.
Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, House Bill 1604 amends the Vehicle Code. It increases the remedies available to the courts or to a judge with regard to visitation violation cases in a child custody situation. The courts may order, under the language in this bill, the courts may order a suspension of an individual's driver's license until the court determines that the parent is in compliance, a revocation of the parent's professional license for no more than 6 months, find that a party that is guilty of petty offense also order a fine if there's multiple contempt orders and those fines increase. It's very similar to what we do now with regard to child support with regard to the Secretary of State. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Is there any discussion? Senator Raoul, for what purpose do you seek recognition?
To the bill.
For the bill, Senator.
I have immense respect for the sponsor and for the intent of this bill. And, you know, as the state of the law exists right now, there's discretion given to a judge to find somebody in contempt, and there's actually a misdemeanor charge for interference of visitation. What I'm concerned about with this bill is by adding provisions that would allow, that would suggest that a driver's license could be suspended or a professional license could be suspended. The reference to these options in motions that are filed by litigants will create a circumstance where the best interests of the child will not be met, and it'll create a circumstance where you have people fighting and a custodial parent may be intimidated into making a choice as to, am I going to risk losing my professional license or my driver's license, or am I going to put my child at risk by allowing them to spend time with a non-custodial parent that, as Senator Hayne pointed out in committee, may be intoxicated or may somehow put the child at risk. So I want to caution the members of the General Assembly that there's already a remedy for interference of visitation, and by adding these things, I think we're inviting folks to use intimidation in custodial situations that are already tense. I mentioned committee, I stopped practicing family law because I hated it, because parents often did not have the best interest of the child at heart. So I notwithstanding my tremendous respect for the sponsor and for his intent in this bill, I'm going to be voting no, and I urge a no vote on this bill.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Delgado, for what purpose do you seek recognition?
To the bill, Mr. President.
The bill, Senator.
I too rise, and I want to, in opposition to this legislation, I do respect the leader, the gentleman, excellent legislator. I agree with the previous speaker, my colleague, as to the best interest of the child and the remedies that are already in place. As a former child welfare specialist, I would say that not only are we jeopardizing the best interest of the child, which is the most important of all, but when we burden already a dysfunction crisis and suspend a license of a wage earner that also, regardless of the pettiness or the issue at hand, but to reduce that license and get it suspended will definitely have an impact on the ability to pay that child support, let alone to take on the needs and or lose employment. This is complicated. And I see, actually, the Illinois Coalition Against Domestic Violence is an opponent. And so this speaks very in volumes. It actually amplifies the possibility of the person responsible making these payments to fall even further behind, therefore creating a disaster within that family if indeed they have an ability to become intact much later. So I would actually ask that this bill, ask of the sponsor to reconsider moving this bill at this time to continue discussions with a variety of groups. And if not, I would ask for a no vote on this particular legislation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kultra, for what purpose do you rise?
To the bill.
To the bill, Senator.
House Bill 1604 is a bill addressing the problem of visitation interference. It sends a clear and unambiguous message that parent presence and physiological well-being of children is as important as child support and their physical well-being. It brings remedies and sanctions for visitation interference closer to that of child support noncompliance. It also gives the child a better chance of growing up in a healthy, well-rounded, functioning adult in our society. And I would ask for a yes vote.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Silverstein, for what purpose do you rise?
To the bill.
To the bill, Senator.
Let me start up with those beautiful words. I respect the sponsor, and he's my seatmate, and I hope he forgives me for me talking against his bill. Never. Thanks. As an attorney that practices in domestic relations who represents both sides, this is a very tricky issue. And I've litigated both sides, and it's a very emotional issue. But to penalize a custodial parent by taking his or her professional license, whether it be a real estate license or a law license or a beautician license or a barber license, I don't think is the proper way to go. I do think that part of the bill I think we can work on regarding the license. But to hit that custodial parent in the pocketbook where maybe he or she is actually supporting the children or is the main breadwinner, I think is a little unconscionable. So with all due respect to my seatmate, I will be voting no and encourage others. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Murphy, for what purpose do you seek recognition?
To the bill, Mr. President.
To the bill, Senator.
I rise in support of this bill. I guess I'm a little puzzled at the extent of the objection to an attempt by the sponsor to provide a little parity in a relationship between custodial and non-custodial parents. This General Assembly has already provided an opportunity for a custodial parent to seek a remedy for abusive actions by the non-custodial parent. All we're trying to do here is level the playing field. All this bill is intended is to give the custodial parent the opportunity, an extra opportunity, to make sure that non-custodial parent can see their child as they're allowed to do and entitled to do. This is a fairness issue. The only way the custodial parent has a problem is if they abuse the relationship, if they abuse their custodial nature with the child and not allow the non-custodial parent access to which they're entitled. It's very simple. It's the same penalties that the custodial parent has in this bill. It's the same penalties that the non-custodial has. Level the playing field, give both sides in what's obviously a difficult relationship an equal opportunity to enforce their rights. That's all this bill does. I support the Senator's bill and encourage an aye vote.
Senator Hayne, for what purpose do you seek recognition?
To the bill.
The bill, Senator.
We have at the present time in Illinois criminal sanctions, and they're an escalating set of sanctions for visitation violations and abuse. They're referred initially to the state's attorney's office. We handle them. And I handled them as state's attorney. My office did. We handled them. I handled them personally practicing law. It is not correct to say that child support is clear as visitation abuse, that they're comparable, and therefore we should have comparable sanctions as clear. Child support can be determined accurately from court records. Visitation abuse is a very subjective allegation. And these allegations are made sometimes in good faith, sometimes not. And they're made in the heat of resentment and anger. What this does is clothe the court with options that presume that this is a major offense, that the allegation rises to the level of a major offense. It escalates the matter in court. And I personally, I think it's a intrusion on the third branch of the government here to be escalating these things in the most painful situations. When they're filled with resentment, sometimes they're the result of a divorce. This proposed bill applies to situations where there was no marriage, I presume. I'm just I'm rising in opposition to the bill because there should be a better way to do this without upping the ante to the point where a bare allegation rises to the level of a sanction which could result in the loss of a driver's license with no connection, the loss of a license to practice law, the loss of a nursing license, or anything else. There's a better way to do it, and one of the ways is to go through the Bar Association and people who practice in this area. Yes, there is abuse, but late at night, when he shows up with alcohol on his breath, and she says, I don't want to hand my child over to him, he's with a group of ruffians, I don't want to hand my child over to him, does that rise to the level of an allegation of abuse? It may violate the court order. It's up to the court to determine the reasonableness of this, and the senator's correct. This closed the court with options. But by stating these draconian options, we are enhancing and empowering more allegations and more resentment. I would take a step back and at this time vote no.
Thank you, Senator Haynes. Senator Wilhelmi, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. To the bill.
The bill, Senator.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very tricky issue, as previous speakers have mentioned. This is a very difficult area of the law. A lot of emotion, very difficult decisions are made on a daily basis by custodial and non-custodial parents with regard to the visitation of their children and where their children will be that day. These are tough issues and tough decisions. And that's why we have a judicial branch of government. That's why we have men and women that put on a black robe and sit behind the bench and hear the evidence. They weigh the evidence. They listen to the testimony. They review the facts. And today and tomorrow and the next day, they're going to hear these cases in our courts in Illinois. Whether or not this bill passes, these motions will be filed when there is interference with visitation. What we're doing, what the senator is doing in this bill, and let me be frank, I struggled with it. I've had very difficult discussions with stakeholders. We've had meetings. But at the end of the day, what this bill does is it gives our judges discretion. Discretion to use additional penalties that have been described, to take away a driver's license, to remove a professional license, to impose a fine. Or, like they've done yesterday and the day before, they can give a verbal reprimand. They can give a slap on the wrist. They can do nothing. This is about discretion. We should empower our courts to exercise the discretion with the appropriate penalties when the case deserves that penalty. And so I support this measure after a lot of wrangling, a lot of discussions, and a lot of good, solid debate in committee and today, because it's about discretion and making sure that the judge makes the decision that is in the best interests of our children. I urge and I vote.
Senator Sullivan, do you wish to close? Senator Sullivan.
Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the discussion on this issue. And I understand that it's a difficult issue. And, of course, whenever you're dealing with a custody issue and children and parents that sometimes cannot get along, I get that. I want to make a couple of points, and the previous speaker, Senator Wilhelmy, I appreciate your comments very much. But first of all, I want folks to know that with regard to the concerns of domestic violence, I would never move forward with any legislation that I thought would put a child or an individual into a situation that would be more difficult than it already is. I've met with the folks with the domestic violence that represent domestic violence associations, and I just do not feel like their argument holds water, number one. Secondly, one of the speakers talked about, you know, what was in the best interest of the child. If you believe that in the best interest of the child is that they can spend time with their parents, both their custodial and non-custodial, if you think that time is well spent, then there's this legislation you should be supporting, because what we are trying to do, we all know that children can be used as a pawn. They can be used as a pawn, and when they're used as a pawn, they can, part of that is the fact that a parent will not allow them to spend time with their non-custodial parent. And this is what we're trying to do, simply to give the courts some teeth so that they can make sure that that is enforced. Somebody else mentioned that there is not they did not see the distinction, or is not black and white with regard to the paying of child support and visitation. I would disagree with that. I would say that when a child is not spending time with a parent, when they should be spending time with the parent, that's black or white. That's time that's lost. It can't be regained. It's gone. And once it's gone, it's gone. And then finally, I just want to say that there are a number, I believe 30-some states that are currently have similar language to what we're doing, what this legislation does in Illinois. If you believe, finally I'll close with this, if you have faith in the courts and the judges to make the decisions as to what is in the best interest of that child, which they are doing right now, then all we are simply doing is giving them some additional tools in their tool chest to allow the enforcement of visitation. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator. As the bill has an immediate effective date, it's the ruling of the chair that, pursuant to Section 10 of Article 4 of the Illinois Constitution, the passage of this measure will require a 3/5 majority. The question is, shall House Bill 1604 pass? All those in favor will vote aye. Opposed, nay. The voting is open. Have all voted who wish? Have all voted who wish? Have all voted who wish? Take the record. On that question, there are 27 voting aye, 22 voting nay, 1 voting present. And having failed to receive the required constitutional majority, House Bill 1604 is declared lost. Senator Sullivan, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like the previous bill to be put on postponed consideration.
Will be placed on the order of postponed consideration. Thank you, Senator. Senator Garrett, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President, for a point of personal privilege.
Please state your point, Senator.
Yes, I'd like to welcome the Maple School 7th graders coming all the way from Northbrook. They're here to have a tour of Springfield and listen to how we debate issues, and I hope we can give them a warm welcome.
Will our guests in the gallery please rise to be welcomed to the State Senate? Senator Silverstein, for what purpose do you rise?
Just a short announcement. I want to wish congratulations to my good friend James Claiborne, Senator James Claiborne, and his team, the St. Louis Cardinals, for winning the World Series. Senator Claiborne and I have a little rivalry because I am a Cub fan,